So now we move to Unit 3. We move to Unit 3, and this is where we look at the principles that apply in specific and real-world scenario. Principles that apply in specific and real-world scenario. So for an audit to be of value, you see the assurance provider must be independent. Independent, talking about actual independence, and he must be seen to be independent, talking about perceived independence. So this opinion must not be influenced by anyone, especially management. And there are key areas where independence may be threatened. For a firm, areas around fees and pricing. For a family and personal relationship, an accountant may be perceived not independent. Then close business relationships may affect business independence. Also, financial interest, loan guarantees, employment or former employment could affect independence. Long-standing relationships and associations, non-audit services provided to clients, provided to auditors, and also gifts and hospitality and litigation could affect the independence, and the independence of an auditor may be threatened. So think of a judge's robe. A judge's robe. You see, a judge must be independent and be seen to be independent. Wearing a robe, sitting above everyone, and if the judge is seen having dinner with the defendant, the public confidence is lost. Now, auditors must both be and appear independent. They must be both, and they must be independent in appearance. It's very important to understand this analogy. So here is a mnemonic for the independence areas. We have the fees and pricing, the family relationships, financial interest, loans and guarantees, and we have employment, we have long association, we have provision of non-audit services, we have inducements and gifts, we have going to court, which is litigation, then we have loss of business relationship around close business relationships. Very important. All right, so let's talk about fees and pricing. And here is a common area of ethical threats. You see, relative size of fees are one area where if fees from one client are a large proportion of total fees, then dependence creates a self-interest threat or intimidation threat. Now, for public interest entities, the International Federation of Accountants says that 15% of income for 2 consecutive years is presumed to be a threat, while ICAN has a higher threshold of about 25% that is presumed to be a threat. So, if 25% or 15% of an audit firm's income comes from a particular client, then there's presumed threat based on IFAC. While for ICAN, 25% of the income of an audit firm from a particular client is a higher threshold than that of the IFAC, and is also determined as a presumed threat. So safeguards include disclosing to those charged with governance, post-issuance reviews, reducing the dependency, and external quality reviews, and also consulting with ICAN at areas where these threats can be reduced significantly. We also have overdue fees where it creates self-interest threats. You see, fees should be paid before the report is issued. We also have lowballing, where auditors or audit firms quote a low fee to win engagements, and it creates self-interest threats. Acceptably only if appropriate time and qualified staff are available and standards are complied with, then maybe a low fee could be charged. We also have contingency fees which are prohibited. You see, fees based on outcome like no win, no fee creates unsurmountable self-interest threats and advocacy threats. So contingency fees are prohibited. They are prohibited in the accounting space. Now, the correct fee basis, also based on the experience of the person doing the work and time spent, should be charged based on the job. So correct fee basis is very important. Let's look at this analogy. Think of contingency fees like a plumber saying, I only charge if I fix the leak. You see, they'll be motivated to claim success even if the job was shoddy or done haphazardly. So proper fees are based on time and expertise. It's like a plumber charging by the hour. That's what contingency fees mean. So here is a mnemonic to help you remember for the fee rules. don't will help you remember. So dependency, talking about 15% ICAN or 15% of IFAC threshold, while 25% of ICAN threshold has been meted out. Then overdue fees, talking about pay before report. Then no contingencies are prohibited. Then time and expertise on the correct basis will help us to remember practically. All right, next is family and personal relationships. You see, immediate family like spouse or dependent relationships could be threats to independence. So if an immediate family member is a director, an officer, or an employee in a position to exert significant influence, you see, the only safeguard is to remove the individual from the assurance team. We also have situations where close family members like parents, non-dependent child, brother or sister could threaten the independence of an accountant or an auditor. So safeguards should include removing the individual or structuring responsibilities so they don't deal with matters involving the family member. Then other personal relationships could also affect independence. You see, the audit firm must consider any other relationships that may affect their independence and mitigate it appropriately. So think of a family referee. Think of a family referee. If your brother is captain of a football team, you can't referee that match. Even if you are fair, everyone will think you are biased. So the only safe option is to step down from that football match. So this analogy should help drive the point home. Also, close business relationships include financial interest in a joint venture. So arrangements to combine services or acting as a distributor would also affect independence. Now, if the relationship relates to the firm, it's prohibited unless the financial interest is immaterial. So there is need to terminate the relationship or to reduce it or to refuse the engagement. And if the relationship relates to a team member, they need to remove the individual unless the financial interest is immaterial. Then permitted transactions are purchases of goods and services in the normal course of business on an arm's length basis. So those are permitted in the course of business activities, which is very, very important. All right, so next is on financial interest. Financial interest. So neither an assurance team member nor immediate family member nor the firm must hold a direct financial interest or material indirect financial interest in that firm. So there are safeguards that include disposing of those interests or reducing it to be immaterial or removing the individual or ultimately resigning from the audit. These are very important to avoid self-interest threats. So if there's acquisition as a gift or inheritance, it should be disposed of as soon as practicable, or that individual should be removed from the audit. So think of owning shares in a client company like betting on the game you are refereeing. If the share price drops, you might be tempted to cook the accounts to boost it. So you must either sell the shares or not audit the company. That's the perfect safeguard. That's the perfect safeguard. Now, on loans and guarantees, you see, if the client is a bank, now no threat exists if the loan is on normal basis. Now, if the client is not a bank, now the self-interest threat is so great that no safeguard can reduce it unless the loan is material, unless the loan, is immaterial, unless the loan is immaterial. Also, on employment of former employment of audit members, team members. Now, when a team member leaves to join the client, significant threats arise. So the code requires that no benefit from the firm unless it is fixed, and no significant amounts owed, no participation in the firm business is allowed from that team member. Now, for a former key audit partner joining a public interest entity, independence is compromised unless audited financial statements have been issued for at least 12 months and the partner is not on the audit team. So if a team member is negotiating to join the client, you see, you need to remove them from the team and review their significant judgments. Also, recent service with a client where individuals who work for the client in a key position during the period covered should not be assigned to the assurance team. Now, think of the revolving door. You see, if a government regulator joins a company they used to regulate, will they be tough on their former colleagues? Of course not. So the same applies to auditors. We need to remove yourself or remove ourselves from the audit team. Remove ourselves from the audit team. Next is long association of senior personnel. You see, for public interest entity or entities, a key audit partner should be rotated after at least more than 7 years, after 7 years. So the cooling off period speaks to the fact that engagement partners should be rotated every 5 years. Quality reviewers should be rotated every 3 years. Then other key partners of those firms should be rotated on jobs every 2 years. So 7 years may be extended to 8 years in exceptional circumstances like serious illness of the incoming partner. So think of it as getting fresh eyes on the problem. After years on the same audit, you stop noticing things. So a new partner sees what you've missed. It's very important to take note of this rotation principle. And here is a mnemonic for rotation. So 7532, speaking to 7 years maximum for a key audit partner, 5 years cooling off for engagement partner, while 3 years cooling off for a quality reviewer, and 2 years cooling off for key partners. Very importantly. Now, for provision of non-assurance services, this is a big area. It's a big area, so let's break it down. You see, prohibition on assuming management responsibilities is very important because the firm cannot act in managerial capacity where it sets policies, it's hiring, it's authorizing transactions, preparing financial statements. The auditor is prohibited from assuming management responsibilities. The auditor is prohibited from preparing accounting records and financial statements, preparing accounting records and providing financial statements. And very importantly, for public interest entities, this is prohibited for auditors. But for non-public interest entities, it's allowed, but with safeguards. It's not performed by the audit team, and the client originates data. And also the client approves changes. Also, for valuation services, for public interest entities, the auditor is prohibited if it's material. That's for valuation services. Then for non-public interest entities, prohibition if it's material and it involves significant subjectivity is prohibited. Also for taxation services, you see, tax return preparations are no threat if management actually takes responsibilities. Also, tax calculations for public interest entities are prohibited for auditors. Also, for tax planning, it's accepted or acceptable if supported by precedented and safeguards are in place. And for internal audit services, you see there is the self-review threat. So safeguards are required because the client is responsible. The audit committee should approve the scope, and then findings should be reported to the audit committee and not to management. And for IT services, you see, for public interest entities, auditors cannot provide IT services with audit services at the same time. It's prohibited. They cannot design and implement financial information systems. But for public interest entities, if safeguards are required, it is permissible. Then for temporary staff assignments, it could be agreed for only short periods where the audit team or the audit staff does not assume management responsibilities or provide clients, and there has to be the client has to do the supervision themselves. We also have litigation support services where this can be provided, but to avoid self-review advocacy threat, there needs to be the use of separate teams and independent experts. Also for legal services, you see, it's not allowed if the amounts are material, because it creates significant advocacy and self-review threats. And for recruitment of senior management, you see, the auditor cannot act as a negotiator or search for candidates or do reference checks for key positions. Then for corporate finance, the auditor cannot promote or deal in or underwrite the audit client's shares. So think of it like a doctor and a surgeon. You see, the auditor should not also be the bookkeeper, the valuer, and the tax advisor. That's like being the nurse, the patient, and the doctor all at once. You can't be objective when reviewing your own work. This is very important. So here's the mnemonic to remember non-audit services around accounting. Talking about is prohibited for public interest entities, and valuation services is prohibited if it's material. Internal audit is permitted, but safeguards has to be provided. Then tax is prohibited if there's advocacy. Then IT systems is prohibited for public interest entities. And litigation and safeguards are required for litigation. And for corporate finance, is prohibited if advocating for shares could cause an issue. Then recruitment is prohibited for senior management roles. All right, so let's look at inducements around gifts and hospitality. You see, accepting inducements will create self-interest threat for the auditor. It will create familiarity and intimidation threat. So inducements shall only be accepted where the value is trivial and inconsequential. So think of a bribe. You see, a gift is like a handshake. If it's a pen or a calendar, then it's fine. But if it's a trip to Dubai or to Paris, then it's a bribe. Would you be embarrassed to tell your partners about a bribe given to you? If yes, then don't accept it. Don't accept it. So inducement and gifts and hospitality that are material are not allowed for auditors. Now let's look at actual or perceived litigation that creates self-interest or intimidation threats. So safeguards removed, the safeguards around acting or around actual or threatened litigation will create self-interest threat or intimidation threat. You see, the safeguard will include to remove the involved team member and appoint an additional professional accountant to review the work. It's very important to take note of this. So let's apply what we've learned so far to a practical scenario. So Happy Day or Happy Days offers audit team free tickets. Wants to second last year's audit senior for 6 months and wants the firm to provide internal audit services. So A, we have free tickets, which is only acceptable if it's trivial and inconsequential. Then major event tickets, likely not trivial, should be declined. Then on secondment, we're seeing the fact that secondments are acceptable only for short period. No management responsibilities, then the client supervises the work. And the safeguards here is there are no subsequent audit responsibilities, not on the audit team, and there should be additional reviews. Then the third one, C, is internal audit services. It's acceptable with safeguards. You see, the client is responsible. The audit committee approves the scope, and also findings reported to the audit committee there should be use of a separate team. So these offers are like warning signs. You see, free tickets could make the team biased, while secondment could blur the independence of the auditors. So providing internal audit services and also audit services or external audit services could create self-review threats. So each of these services must be carefully evaluated before it is provided. It must be carefully evaluated before it is provided. This is very, very important. So that brings us to the end of independence, objectivity, and integrity, and specific areas to apply this in practice. These are very important to understand, the safeguards and how to deal